All right. One of the chapters in the textbook talks about obesity as a disability, and we're going to compare and contrast the information in the textbook with the concept of weight stigma, which is in the next PowerPoint/screencast. So, obesity is now considered the second leading cause of preventable death after cigarette smoking, and it is estimated that over 300,000 people die each year in the US from obesity-related complications. So this is a major health issue, obesity leading to things like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and stroke. Big time, right? That's probably an understatement related to the medical costs associated with it. All of those diseases are in the billions and billions of dollars. People spend also $33 billion on weight loss and management remedies each year. Definitions: overweight refers to excess amount of body weight that may come from muscles, bone, fat, and water. Obesity is determined by using BMI, and the formula there, kilograms divided by height in meters squared. Obesity refers to an excess amount of body fat. So obesity defined as a BMI of 30 or higher, the overweight range 25 to 29.9. So to give some perspective on a 70-inch, 5'10" individual, what they would weigh in the different categories. A 70-inch, 5'10" individual to be within the quote-unquote normal range would weigh between 120 and 174 pounds. To be obese, they would be 209 pounds or more, or I should say greater than 209 pounds. There's also then different obesity classifications, and Class 1, 30 to 34.9, Class 2, 35 to 39.9, and Class 3, 40 or greater. Now, obesity, the use of BMI, some people will argue it is not a great measure of health, and they may go to examples like this. Now, again, I don't know why people don't appreciate BMI for what it is potentially illustrating. Here's a 5'9" individual, off-season weight 280 pounds, very, very fit individual there, cuts down in competition 250 pounds. In both cases, his BMI is in the quote-unquote obese category, but you would not call this individual obese in that context, right? Technically, by BMI, he is obese, but I don't think by and large we're worried about this individual the same way we're worried about other individuals who have a greater proportion of body fat versus lean muscle mass. There are BMI calculators online if you are interested in accessing them at all. So in the United States, how are we doing? Well, again, obesity is linked to a lot of different diseases, as we see there on the right. We have to be careful, though, when working with individuals that we don't bring weight stigma or fat phobia into things, and in doing so, turn off people from accessing medical care. So again, there's just BMI categories, just to recall, and the measurements there. How are we doing here in the United States? Well, this was 1985 and what data was available at the time. And even in those places that there was data, we were looking at percentages that were in the 20 or below range. And here's that picture kind of blown up so you can see that better. You can see where your particular state is. Now, I don't have this in a play mode, but if you were to download the PowerPoint and let it run through, what you would see is a transition from more states in the green and yellow to more of the oranges and kind of burnt orange color. Same thing here. This is for non-Hispanic white adults. You would see a progression from the lighter colors to the darker colors. And we can kind of see that here. Well, this is with Hispanic adults and already in the orange and burnt orange colors as they progress through the years. It's kind of a heat map. It illustrates things like this. Here are non-Hispanic black adults running through things. And I wonder, let me pause things. I wonder if I can pull this up. Hold on, see if I can do it. Yeah, not everything's in the screen, but I'm able to do it here a little bit. And you're able to see then the transitions here, hopefully, coming up. Oh, I had it going, but now it's not. So now we can see 2012. Let me see if I can get to kind of advance forward here. Hold on just a moment. Yeah, it's doing it again, but I'm not able to do it. So probably the best way to see it, you can start to see the changes here with 2016. Probably the best way to see it is to download the PowerPoint and just kind of watch the changes over the years. So prevalence of obesity in the US is around 42%, probably higher now. That's data from a few years ago. And there's been increases that have occurred over the years. The annual medical costs associated with obesity is about 150 billion in 2008 and probably has increased. And just some statistics looking at different racial backgrounds. Basically, what this is just some information kind of describing a little bit more what we're seeing among men and women and racial backgrounds. If you're interested in that, you can pause the recording and read through it. Children are also affected, and the increasing prevalence of obesity increases as people age. Then just some general information on socioeconomic status, and if you're interested in reading that, you can go ahead and do so. What's very interesting to me is if you look at dietary habits, a lot of times dietary habits coincide with regions in the country where there is more obesity. For example, if we look here, this 1% of adults report consuming fruit less than one time a day. 38 to 56% here in this bluish region. Well, if we take a look at this map here, obesity, look at that. Same thing with like walking and biking to work. Now these would be correlations and so not causation per se, but you get an idea. If we're looking at the percentage of adults who walk or bike to work and the percentage of people who are obese in particular areas, it starts to paint a picture. And so illustrated here is the darker the areas are areas where there's less vegetable and less fruit consumption. Same thing, we're looking at adolescents, less fruit and veggie consumption. Why do we talk about that? Because typically, general guideline from my plate is about 5 or so servings a day. A lot of registered dietitians are talking now about having people do 9 to 11 servings a day of fruits and vegetables, more vegetables than fruits, and to try to eat the rainbow. Looking at veggie comparisons, adults versus kids, and of course, that walking and biking to work versus obesity. Aerobic exercise, the requirements, or I shouldn't say the requirements, the minimum recommendations are 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic exercise per week. And so you get a sense of that, who is being able to do that or meet those recommendations. And then even better, the 300 or 150 and who's meeting those recommendations. This is illustrating adults who meet strength training recommendations. Strength training recommendations are a minimum of 2 days a week. And then here is a breakdown of adults who meet both aerobic and resistance training recommendations. So basically what we're seeing when we look back at these maps are there are a lot of people that aren't meeting these minimum aerobic and resistance training recommendations. Some people don't like the idea of running or even going out for a walk. Some people don't like the idea of weightlifting. Does physical activity always have to look like this? And the answer is no. There are other ways that people can get physical activity. And again, the challenge is knowing what our clients' preferences are. But the big thing from this kind of introductory talk here is that obesity is looked at in some circles as a potential disability, or at least within the textbook is talked about that in this context. So let's now move on to weight stigma.